of those two servicing towers will retract to initiate the automated launch sequence. There's the retraction of the first of the servicing towers. The second tower now is beginning to retract. The automated launch sequence underway, standing by for main engine start. Main engine start initiated. Turbo pumps and engines up to flight speed. And liftoff. Liftoff of the 68th Progress resupply craft, bound on a 2-day journey to the International Space Station. Good roll, yaw, and pitch program reported. Good parameters. Stage 1 engines operating normally. The Soyuz boosters arcing out to the northeast. The vehicle is reported to be in good, stable configuration. Coming up on the 1-minute mark into the flight. Good pressure in the combustion chambers. A good ride so far for the Progress resupply craft. Second stage engines continue to perform normally. 3.5 minutes into the flight. The Soyuz booster traveling more than 6,000 miles an hour, 66 miles in altitude.
14th, 1947, the X-1 rocket aircraft made history with a first supersonic flight. Traveling around 700 miles an hour, the X-1 was faster than the speed of sound. Piloted by United States Air Force test pilot Chuck Yeager, the X-1 was nicknamed Glamorous Glynis for Yeager's wife. Built solely for experimental purposes, the X-1 established research aircraft. X-planes are experimental aircraft used to test new aerodynamic concepts and technologies.
Ready to launch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's a good light, that's a good light. Push your throttle up.
Igniter. Ready to launch now.
50 years ago, on October 3rd, 1967, the X-15 rocket aircraft set a new speed record. Flying at Mach 6.7, or 4,520 miles per hour, William J. Pete Knight piloted this record-breaking flight. Flying faster and higher than ever before, pilots qualified as astronauts reaching the edge of outer space, as high as 50 miles into the atmosphere. To push the envelope, NASA pioneered new technologies, engines, and materials. NASA is building on that legacy of experimental aircraft today. A new X-plane called the Low Boom Flight Demonstrator, or LBFD, is being developed to minimize sonic booms. A sonic boom is made by shock waves when an aircraft travels through the air faster than the speed of sound. Current noise regulations restrict supersonic flights over land. Unique shaping and other design features will diminish the loud sonic boom to the level of a soft thump. Another new NASA X-plane is electric and battery-powered. The X-57 is testing new propulsion technology. 12 motors provide extra lift during the takeoff, and then 2 cruise motors take over. Distributing energy over the entire wing makes the X-57 more efficient. Flying above and beyond, NASA continues to push the envelope in aerodynamic research.
Hey, you're watching NASA TV, on the air and online every day, on this planet and beyond.
Good day from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Another busy week is underway aboard the International Outpost as the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers here in the Flight Control Room work with their Russian counterparts at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow, awaiting the arrival less than an hour from now of a Russian space freighter, the ISS Progress 68 cargo craft that launched 2 days ago from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. This view from a cross-haired engineering camera on the outside of the Progress showing its view as it slowly but steadily moves toward an automated docking to the Piers docking compartment, with docking scheduled at 6:10 a.m. Central Time, 7:10 a.m. Eastern Time. The International Space Station with the Progress in chase less than 35 kilometers behind the station, currently flying 252 statute miles above Argentina, moving from southwest to northeast on a track that will carry the two craft just to the northwest of Rio de Janeiro a short time from now and back out over the Atlantic Ocean. Again, the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers on console here in the flight control room at this hour, led by Anthony Varia, the flight director for this Progress activity, as he was back on Saturday for launch. To his right, joined on console by spacecraft communicators Alex Kanellakos and astronaut Butch Wilmore, who are talking to the space station crew, the Expedition 53 crew, aboard the International Space Station in the early hours of their first full workday of the week. A good view from an external camera on the International Space Station, looking at one of the two Soyuz vehicles that is docked to the Russian segment of the station, that being the Soyuz MS-05 vehicle that carried Space Station Commander Randy Brezhnev, Paolo Nespoli of the European Space Agency, and Sergei Rosansky to the International Space Station back in July. Just to the left of where that Soyuz is docked is the Piers docking compartment. That is where the Progress 68 cargo craft will link up to just 52 minutes from now. As we mentioned, the path of the Progress to the International Space Station for its automated docking a short time from now is being controlled by Russian flight controllers in this live view from a balcony camera of the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, the town outside of Moscow. They took over control of the Progress's two-day journey from its launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan shortly after the Progress reached orbit. Back on Saturday, a Soyuz 2.1A booster lifted off at 3:46 a.m. Central Time, 2:46 p.m. at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, following a two-day launch postponement. It arced out over the northeast, carrying atop it its third stage, the Progress 68 cargo craft. The ascent was perfectly nominal. It took 8 minutes and 46 seconds for the Progress to reach its preliminary orbit, where it separated from the third stage of that Soyuz booster, deployed its navigational antennas and its solar arrays, and began the two-day chase to catch up to the International Space Station. Since the Progress reached orbit, all of its automated engine firings to fine-tune its path to the station and raise its altitude to match that of the International Space Station, all of that has gone by the book. So far, a perfect rendezvous by the Progress vehicle as it closes in for the fly-around of the International Space Station. Once it reaches the close vicinity of the complex, that fly-around scheduled to begin about 28 minutes from now at 5:47 a.m. Central Time. Once the fly around is complete, there will be a period of station keeping for a couple of minutes to allow the Russian flight controllers to assess the Progress's systems and look at its alignment to the Piers docking compartment, which is the port of call for this cargo ship that is carrying almost 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 53 crew. That cargo is broken down to 1,940 pounds of propellant, 51 pounds of oxygen, 53 pounds of air, 926 pounds of water, and 2,976 pounds of dry cargo and spare parts for a total of 5,946 pounds on the manifest for the 68 Progress vehicle. Once it automatically links up to the Piers docking compartment docking port, the docking probe on the Progress will begin to retract to form a hard mate between the two vehicles. Hooks on the Progress side of that docking interface will close, and the Progress will be home. It will spend the next 5 months linked up to the Piers docking compartment. There will be a period of about 3 hours or 2 orbits of the Earth to enable the Russian cosmonauts on board the station, Sergei Ryazanskiy and Alexander Mazurkin, to conduct leak checks at the docking interface between the Progress and the Piers docking compartment before they open up the inner hatch in the Zvezda service module and the Piers docking compartment, and then the Progress hatch itself to enable the unloading of the cargo aboard the Progress to get underway. During the course of the past several hours, Russian flight controllers monitored the automated program that enabled the Progress to conduct the activation of its core's automated rendezvous system. The passive side of the core's automated rendezvous system in the Zvezda service module was also activated. Good data provided back and forth between the Zvezda service module and the Progress itself. With everything going as smoothly as it is, the Progress should be using that core's automated rendezvous system for its approach and docking to the International Space Station in the highly unlikely event that a problem would occur with the core system. We could default back to the Toru, or telerobotically operated system, that is basically on a control panel in the Zvezda service module that will be manned by Sergei Ryazanskiy and Alexander Mazurkin at a joystick, basically, that they could use to fly in the Progress for a manual docking to the Piers docking compartment. But so far, all of the data has been perfect. Spot on so far, and we expect no issues as the Progress makes its way for a docking less than 46 minutes from now. Over the course of the next several minutes, there will be additional tests of the command link between that telerobotically operated backup rendezvous system and the Progress vehicle. The Progress television activation is also on tap a few minutes from now. The vehicle will reach a point close to the International Space Station called the Ballistic Targeting Point, which is essentially the entry into the neighborhood of the International Space Station for the final fly-around, a period of station keeping, and then the command for its final approach for contact and capture at the Piers docking compartment. At the time that docking occurs, the Progress will be moving at a very, very slow rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second. When contact and capture is conducted, there will be a period of a few seconds, perhaps a minute or so, to allow the relative motion of the two vehicles to dampen out against one another before the docking probe is retracted and the hooks are closed to form a hard mate between the Progress and the International Space Station. The Progress now just 10 kilometers away from the International Space Station. Good reports coming in from the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov as the Progress and the International Space Station, their paths slowly but surely closing against one another, pass off the northeast coast of South America, soon to cross the west coast of Africa.
This is page 19 of Toro ODF. So go ahead and complete the steps on that page. Copy.
Again, this view looking at a Soyuz spacecraft, the one that Randy Bresnik, Sergei Rosansky, and Paulo Nespoli launched on back in July to reach the International Space Station, docked to the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Zarya module on the Russian segment of the station. To the left, in your field of view, is the Piers docking compartment to which the Progress 68 cargo craft will link up to in about 42 minutes. We're about 9 minutes away from the activation of the Progress's television systems. That should give us our first view of the International Space Station from the approaching cargo craft that again is loaded with almost 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 53 crew. 7 kilometers now separating the Progress from the International Space Station. This rendezvous so far is a textbook in nature. No issues reported with the Progress craft following its launch 2 days ago from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Meanwhile, aboard the International Space Station, the station commander, Randy Bresnik, and flight engineer Joe Acaba of NASA are in the process of configuring tools that they will carry outside with them on Friday for the third in a series of spacewalks, and a trio of spacewalks being conducted this month by the Expedition 53 crew.
Sergey, can you arm the command to activate Toro on the laptop? Of course, we will.
Включать будем паузу.
But you will fire the command when we give you a go, if it's required. Copy.
That spacewalk schedule for Friday beginning at about 7:05 a.m. Central Time by Bresnik and Acaba. We'll see the two NASA astronauts venture outside the Quest airlock in their extravehicular mobility units to change out a camera light assembly that has degraded on the newly installed latching end effector at the end of the Canadarm2 robotic arm. They will also install a high-definition camera on the starboard one, a lower outboard truss of the International Complex, as well as do other maintenance work outside in the 205th spacewalk in support of space station assembly and maintenance. Bresnik will be making the 5th spacewalk of his career and his 3rd spacewalk in 2 weeks. Joe Acaba will be conducting the 3rd spacewalk in his career. Again, that is coming up on Friday. This Friday, October 20th, our NASA television coverage of that spacewalk is scheduled to begin at 5:30 a.m. Central Time, with the spacewalk itself scheduled to get underway at about 7:05 a.m. Central Time. Less than about 15 minutes away now from the start of the fly-around of the International Space Station, the Progress 68 in toad-like fashion, hopping from one milestone to another as it continues its inexorable chase to catch up to the complex. Again, we're expecting the Progress's television systems to be activated about 6.5 minutes from now. That should give us a good view of the International Space Station from the approaching Progress. We also will be expecting to receive views of the Progress itself from external cameras on the International Space Station so that we can see its approach and the thruster firings and the final fine-tuning of the Progress's path for an automated link-up to the Piers docking compartment. The Progress is now just 4 kilometers away from the International Space Station. Once docked, will represent the 4th Russian vehicle at the International Space Station. 2 Soyuz spacecraft, one of which is in our view here, that being the Soyuz MS-05 spacecraft. The MS-06 is docked to the space-facing port of the Russian segment of the station, that being the Poisk module that brought Joe Acaba, Mark Vande Hei, and Alexander Mazurkin to the station back in September. There is another Progress vehicle, the 67 Progress, that has been docked for some time now to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module. It will remain docked there until December. The arriving Progress 68 will stay at the Piers docking compartment until next March. Less than 35 minutes away from the docking of the Progress to the International Space Station, the two craft flying from southwest to northeast over Mauritania in Western Africa. This pass will carry the International Space Station and the Progress cargo craft over western Algeria and back over the Mediterranean, almost directly over Greece. Here in the flight control room, Flight Director Anthony Varia is about to poll his team of flight controllers to get a go, no-go for Progress approach and docking. Flight Director Anthony Varia is receiving no liens that would prevent the Progress from proceeding on for its docking to the International Space Station. He will pass that on to his Russian counterpart a short time from now at the Russian Mission Control Center. And there is our first view of the cargo craft, the Progress 68, right on course, right on track for its link up some 32 and a half minutes from now as the two craft fly over southwestern Algeria.
To start recording. And we confirm you can go ahead and start.
And on the right side of this split screen view, you can see the external black and white cross-aired engineering camera on the Progress itself, showing in the lower left-hand corner the distance between the Progress and the International Space Station, now 1.8 kilometers away. And the lower value is the range of closure, the rate of closure, which is about 4 meters per second. All of the various small engine firings called impulse burns that are fine-tuning the Progress's path to the International Space Station have so far been right on the timeline, perfectly executed, all automated through the onboard computers of the Progress, as has its entire journey since it arrived on orbit on Saturday, less than 9 minutes after its launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Copy. And Sergey, you can go ahead and activate Toro and start Toro test. For page 21. Make sure that you have all the right buttons. Depressed. Copy. That's been verified.
Flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center instructing Sergei Rosansky in the Zvezda service module to activate the telerobotically operated system, the Toru system, This is simply by the timeline. In the unlikely event a problem would occur with the Corps' automated rendezvous system. So far, so good, however, as the Corps is rock solid, providing all of the data required for the Progress to hone in on its target, which is the docking port of the Piers docking compartment.
Экипаж ЛКС, встретить СУПа.
Station Moscow on space to ground 1.
Выдали ПУБПС.
Yeah, POBPS initial is set.
Ручки подготовили.
Hand controllers have been prepared for,
Никакую там не работу, ни ручное управление не включайте, чтобы
but don't activate operation mode.
по спецификованному кораблю.
Just as we did with the docked vehicle test. Of course, we understand.
An excellent view against
Through
the background of the Mediterranean, as the Progress 68 now is just over 1 kilometer away from its destination at the Piers docking compartment on the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The Piers launched back in September 2001, serving a dual role during its lifetime on the station as both a docking port for arriving Russian vehicles as well as an airlock for Russian-based spacewalks. This view from the Progress of the International Space Station, now just 930 meters away.
clockwise and counterclockwise. Rotational hand controller test is complete.
That is Greece just below the Progress as it continues to close in at a rate of about 2 meters per second. Again, at the time of docking, the Progress will reach its contact point at about 1/10 of a meter per second.
To the left, nominal. Going down, nominal. Going up, nominal. Pulling towards myself. And pushing away from myself, everything is nominal. BPS initial on the BPS control panel, everything is back to initial. Copy. Page 21, step 4.3.
And the latest in the series of so-called impulse burns, looking very good on the Progress. Again, executing an automated program for its approach to the International Space Station, now just 700 meters separating the two craft.
Selection through different AGC modes.
Есть изменения изображения.
I hope you can see the difference in image.
Можете оставить, как вам лучше видно.
Sergey, you can keep the image the way you prefer. It's really for you. Copy. We're working on it.
Закончили работу с пересветкой, пожимаем работу.
600 meters now separating the Progress from the International Space Station.
Operational mode.
Passing over central Italy, moving from southwest to northeast, soon to cross the coast of Croatia.
Принято. Сергей, работа в зале, сеть оставляем включенным.
Copy, Sergey.
Контролируем процесс автоматического сближения.
And we're monitoring automatic rendezvous. Copy.
Sergei Rozansky in the Zvezda service module reports a good test of the backup rendezvous system, the telerobotically operated system that would be used by him and Alexander Mazurkin from a control panel in Zvezda in the unlikely event a problem would crop up with Kurs, but the automated rendezvous system is in great shape, bringing the Progress in very slowly but surely for its link up some 24.5 minutes from now to the Piers docking compartment. We're inside 2 minutes before the start of the fly around of the International Space Station by the Progress. That will align the Progress vehicle to the Piers docking compartment for a brief period of station keeping.
Расстояние 420 метров, скорость 1 метр в секунду на сближение, получится штатно.
423 meters range, 1.0 meters per second range rate. Everything's nominal. Look up, Sergey.
Again, this view from the Progress external television camera, now 400 meters separating the two craft. Closing at a rate of just over 1 meter per second. And the fly around now in progress. This is a fly around of just 59 degrees in its angle that will align the Progress with the Piers docking compartment a short time from now. We're handing over communications and downlink television capability between our satellites on the tracking and data relay satellite system. We'll get that back a short time from now. The station in progress flying over Ukraine, about to begin a pass over southern Russia.
Sergey, we're in the middle of a fly around right now, so you need to move to page 22 of the tour book.
And we have our television capability back. 300 meters separating the two vehicles as the Progress continues its fly around, closing at a rate of about half a meter per second.
Again, you can see on the bottom right screen the NASA TV feed. On the bottom left of that bottom right screen, you can see the two numbers, the distance in kilometers being 0.299 now, that is 299 meters, and the rate of closure.
The Progress is about halfway through its fly around, inside 300 meters now. Docking schedule less than 21 minutes from now.
Расстояние 275 метров.
275 is the range. 0.52 is the rate. Everything's nominal, and we have a visual on the spacecraft.
Those words through an interpreter of Sergei Rosansky inside the Zvezda service module. Now in visual contact with the Progress as it continues its fly around.
Yep, fairly consistent, I would say.
Принято.
Okay, copy.
And as you can see, the Progress on automated command from its computers conducting a roll maneuver. This will place its solar arrays in the correct orientation for its final approach for contact and capture to the Piers docking compartment a short time from now. 200 meters separating the two vehicles. The Piers docking compartment very visible right at the center of the crosshairs. And this view from station truss cameras showing the Progress as it has put the brakes on here for a period of station keeping. The Russian flight control team is taking a look at the Progress systems before the final approach is initiated. We expect this station keeping period to be very, very brief with all of the Progress's systems in excellent shape.
Go ahead.
Сергей, выдаем
Sergey,
команду на причал.
you go to send the final approach command, format 44, and then send the command to activate operational mode and then deactivate. Okay, copy and work. Andrei, again, we're sending BPS initial, right? BPS initial, then ups mode, then display 44, and then deactivate the operational mode. Display 44 has been sent, operational mode has been deactivated.
And about 5 minutes ahead of schedule, final approach has now been initiated as the Progress begins to close the final 200 meters for its automated docking to the Piers docking compartment.
Go ahead, Andrei. Yeah, continue automatic final approach monitoring. Speaking at the same time. Copy. Just as a reminder that you'll need to activate the breakout, the back off at the range of 30 meters.
The crew in the U.S. segment of the International Space Station has been informed of the early final approach initiated by the Progress 68 cargo craft You see at the bottom of your screen those solar arrays that are folded up like an accordion. Those are the no longer needed solar arrays on the Zarya module, the first component of the International Space Station that was launched back on November 20th, 1998. Just above the crosshairs, you see the docking port on the Piers docking compartment, to where the Progress will link up to a short time from now, 130 meters separating the two vehicles, Progress closing at about 0.6 of a meter per second.
Range is 130, 0.66 is the rate. Examiner.
That's not a stream issue, that's actually a hardware
We copy.
issue with one of the ISS cameras that has a little color problem.
Inside that unpiloted resupply ship, 1,940 pounds of propellant, 51 pounds of oxygen, 53 pounds of air, 926 pounds of water, and 2,976 pounds of dry cargo and spare parts, equaling 2.9 tons of supplies, food, and fuel for the Expedition 53 crew.
Range is
100 meters now separating Progress and the International Space Station.
Everything is nominal and the crosshairs are aligned.
The two vehicles are flying over eastern Kazakhstan, about to move from northwest to southeast across south of Mongolia. Back with our view again from the Progress's external television camera, 60 meters separating the Progress from the Piers docking compartment, which you can see just above the crosshairs. Rate of closure now 0.2 of a meter per second.
Moscow for Sergey and Toro up. Go ahead.
Ждем сообщения готовности ССВП.
Standing by for the SSVP ready call down from you. Copy. We're standing by too.
Now if you look at the crosshairs, just to the bottom left of the crosshairs, or right at the crosshairs, there's the small black disc coming up now. That is the docking alignment indicator. It's essentially a small set of crosshairs on the station itself that can be aligned with the crosshairs. Usually they're not usually used for main docking because there are other instruments that
the Progress 68 cargo craft and the International Space Station now moving into an orbital sunset.
Bit C is nominal. Everything's nominal.
Moscow
Moscow copies for Toro. Can you confirm that the floodlight is on, so you do not need to activate the floodlight, and the backup is enabled. Station unintelligible.
And other navigation methods may be a few centimeters off, which is okay because the docking part.
Yeah, we still remember about the backup. SSVP ready message just came up.
So they're not always perfectly aligned on docking, but they can be used for...
Everything continues to proceed in normal fashion, just 44 meters separating the two craft.
And they're actually a three-dimensional object. You can use them like iron sights a bit. They
range is 42 meters, 42. Rate is 0.16. Everything's nominal. Crosshairs are aligned. Moscow copies.
They also have a degree scale on them to show the roll alignment of the spacecraft. I've actually put a little video in the info box, should be the second video.
As we come to the top of the hour, the Progress 68 cargo craft in the final minutes of its two-day journey following its launch on Saturday morning from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Now just 30 meters separating the two craft. You can see the Pirs docking compartment just above the crosshairs. The docking target perfectly aligned with those crosshairs.
Now the 8-minute countdown I just put in again. That's
the station and the Progress flying over northern China at an altitude of 252 statute miles.
That's actually the scheduled docking time, however, we are a few minutes early.
Activating operational mode and enabling backup. Copy. Do not deactivate the, do not disable the operational mode quite yet. Absolutely. Standing by. Selecting various AGC modes. Moscow.
And the Progress continuing to slowly move toward its docking target at the Pirs docking compartment. A great view of one of the two Soyuz vehicles linked up to the International Space Station. That particular vehicle is the MS-05, the Soyuz MS-05, docked to the Rosviet module on the Russian segment of the station that brought Randy Bresnik, Sergei Ryazanskiy, and Paolo Nespoli to the complex back in July. "20 meters separating the Progress from the Pirs docking compartment.
We can now start seeing
closing at a rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second.
We can now actually start seeing those little puffs.
Range is 18 meters, rate is 0.12.
This high-definition external viewer camera on the International Space Station showing the Progress closing the final few feet before contact and capture. Just 10 meters separating the Progress from its docking port.
Okay, copy. 2 squares, range is 0.1. Everything is nominal. Moscow copies.
Seven meters now. Standing by for contact and capture.
Range is about 3 meters. Rate is 0.12. Everything is nominal. Crosshairs are aligned. Moscow copy.
We have contact.
Contact.
And capture.
And mechanical capture.
Contact and capture confirmed. Docking confirmed at 6:04 a.m. Central Time, 7:04 a.m. Eastern Time, as the Progress 68 cargo craft and the International Space Station flew 252 statute miles over eastern China.
You will deactivate the Toro hardware on an additional MCM Go. Okay, standing by for MCM Go to shut down Toro.
So we have successful docking, and as you can see, about 4 minutes early ahead of the original scheduled time.
And this view now from another truss camera showing the newly arrived Progress 68 cargo craft on the left. On the right is the Soyuz MSO-5 spacecraft, one of the two manned Soyuz vehicles at the International Space Station's Rassvet module. Again, docking occurring at 6:04 a.m. Central Time, 7:04 a.m. Eastern Time, as the Progress and the International Space Station flew over eastern China.
Meaning that since the...
Standing by for relative motion between the two vehicles to dampen out before the Progress's docking probe begins to retract.
Since the docking was a bit early, they actually still made it in sunlight. At scheduled docking, they wouldn't have made it within sunlight anymore, as the sun now very slowly sets behind the space station. The docking port is now settling, which means that the first docking is actually a rather soft connection, where the docking port is still capable to move to compensate both a slight imprecision in the docking itself as well as some relative motion, and this now slowly dampens and settles into a position exactly centered on the docking port before clamps move into the spacecraft to...
This view again from the Progress's camera showing the relative motion between the two vehicles, which is beginning to settle out.
And you can see here the docking alignment indicator actually showing us how the spacecraft is moving relative to the ISS. The center part, there's actually a slightly dimmer circle in the middle of that alignment indicator that is actually a separate piece of crosshairs that is closer to the spacecraft than the backdrop of the docking alignment indicator, showing us if the spacecraft is drifting off laterally.
This view of the ISS flight control room at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow. Russian flight controllers watching the process of the retraction of the Progress's docking probe. The probe now having been retracted to form a hard mate between the two vehicles, standing by for confirmation of hooks closed. This is Mission Control Houston, a view now back in our flight control room at the International Space Station's flight control room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. We have received confirmation that the Progress hooks are now closed at the Piers docking compartment, a hard mate having been secured between the newest Russian space freighter and the international outpost delivering almost 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 53 crew. Over the course of the next 2 orbits, the Russian cosmonauts on board the station, Sergei Ryazanskiy and Alexander Mazurkin, will conduct leak checks to make sure that we have a tight seal between the Progress and the Pirs docking compartment before they begin to open up the hatches between the 2 craft and start unloading some of the cargo on board that Progress resupply vehicle. So once again, the docking culminating a flawless 2-day journey following the Progress's launch atop a Soyuz 2.1A booster on Saturday from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The fully automated docking culminating in a link-up to the Pirs docking compartment at 6:04 a.m. Central Time, 7:04 a.m. Eastern Time, wrapping up its 2-day journey. And that will wrap up our activity here in the flight control room for the day. We'll close with a couple of programming notes. Later this morning on NASA television at 11:05 a.m. Central Time, 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time, there will be an in-flight event involving members of the space station's Expedition 53 crew as we have a Facebook Live event that will involve Space Station Program Manager Kirk Shireman talking about the initiation of a year of education on station. Former educator astronaut Joe Acaba, flight engineer aboard the Expedition 53 crew, will be joined by European Space Agency astronaut and flight engineer Paolo Nespoli to discuss some of the elements of the activities involving educational outreach aboard the International Complex. Again, our in-flight event with Acaba, Nespoli, ISS Program Manager Kirk Shireman to air on NASA television this morning at 11:05 a.m. Central Time, 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time. And on Friday, October 20th, the third in the series of current spacewalks on the International Space Station will undergo our live coverage on NASA TV. We'll start our coverage of that spacewalk by Randy Bresnik and Joe Acaba at 5:30 a.m. Central Time, 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time, with the spacewalk expected to last about 6.5 hours. It is set to begin at about 7:05 a.m. Central, 8:05 a.m. Eastern Time. So a busy week underway aboard the International Space Station, off to a great start with the flawless docking of the Progress 68 cargo craft to the Pirs docking compartment. So that'll wrap up our coverage of Progress's arrival at the International Space Station. Have a good day. This is Mission Control Houston.
I will now close this live stream and set the ISS 24/7 live stream back up. Now I will also upload a full coverage of this launch, of this docking, as well as time lapse. Now there was a Minotaur rocket launch scheduled for tomorrow. However, this has been postponed and now doesn't have a scheduled time right now. It will probably still lift off in October, however not within the next week. So my next live stream will be on 20th, live streaming the spacewalk from the International Space Station, and then on October 30th the Falcon 9 Curiosat 5A launch. So with this I will wrap up this live stream, and as always, thanks for watching.